Good evening, campers. It's me, Kira. The reason why I sound a little bit scraggly and deep is that I've had some non-invasive throat surgery, and from being in the hospital, I also contracted COVID. Here's a clip for that.
Welcome to my COVID ward tour. Truly a room with a view. Meet Sean, we're besties. The art gallery is quite spectacular. It's just like being in the Louvre.
I am now happily home. I am COVID negative. I have a piece of hospital merch, and I have been told to rest my voice and not to speak for long periods of time. But that is not going to stop me from telling you how horrendous Daniel B. Greene's book Rebels Creed is. Just to rip that band-aid off, R.C. Walden now is not the only accolade of the 00. Well done, Daniel Greene. Somehow you managed to do it. Let's talk about the journey so far. Breach of Peace, which is the prologue to Rebels Creed, was self-published earlier this year. But I said that I was going to read all of this series, a possible 6 books in the making. After his debut, we now have the sophomore Rebels Creed. This is an assumption, but I believe this 6-book series has already been written. It's all set for Greene to publish, but he's going to take criticisms on board, implant them into the novels to say that he's reacted, to say that he's taken on the criticisms of his audience, of his reviewers. Now, firstly, I'd like to point out that Breach of Peace, yes, we are going to talk about Rebels Creed, just let me get this point out of the way. Breach of Peace came to a fairly positive review as a first author, as a debut novel. Yes, there were the cliches that people were talking about that he falls into, but people had hopes that he was going to get better into this series. I myself saw completely through that, and I don't think this is worth any accolade whatsoever. But there was criticism, and Greene addresses that criticism and mentions it very early on within Rebels Creed. What was the criticism? Was it about how he should structure his pose, how he should build on characters, anything that was remotely helpful whatsoever? No, he decided to take on the criticism of the people who thought the Breach of Peace was a pro-bird. Honestly, I can't even get it out without absolutely laughing at the buffoons and thought, why, he's pro-police and pro-murder. How could Daniel B. Greene... How could imagine being told you were pro-murder and pro-police because your book deals with corrupt policemen? Oh my god, what's next? Jeez. Truly, the real tragedy is the fact that you have audience who are able to spout banal rubbish and actually have an effect on your work. Daniel B. Greene then, within this, says that it's bad. The Empire is bad. The Empire, they are bad people who do bad things. And they are bad. And we should not condone the badness that is bad. Really bad. Rebelling against the empire of crooked cops and deities, we then have the rebellion, the rebels, who are good. They are good people. They are good. They do bad things, and I don't condone what they do, but they are good. I don't know what it reminds me of. What is Empire versus Rebels? Oh, let me think. What's it? Let's start off with how Rebels Creed begins. Khalid, who has a penchant of cigarettes, a chain smoker to the max, that she forgets that she has cigarettes in her hand. She just has an amnesia when it comes to lighting up a drag. She can no longer do that. Strapped down on a table, limbs missing, leeches sucking out the blood. She is going to become a super soldier. She is going to have her hand replaced with what even Greene describes as a claw, because that's what it looks like. Okay. Khalid's situation sounds bad, but then you realise that you have to read another prologue on top of the 90-page prologue that you just read, and then you read the 5 pages and realise that Daniel B. Greene has no idea really what he is doing on a page. So, her left hand and right foot were gone. She stared at the empty space where they should have been. There was no pain, just an intense itch, burrowing into the empty space where her appendages had been. we've already had that repetition, so let's just ignore that. But there's just an itch. It doesn't really hurt. Two sentences after, the itch became a burn. Okay, so instantaneously, there's no pain, and now there's pain. Over on the next page, there's now an intense burning growing in her arm. Greene now ripping through the stitches, from going from no pain is in incredible pain and is screaming all over the place. But nothing pains her more than seeing Chapman, the man who did her dirty in breach of peace, the man who has turned coat. And now, after reading the prologue, we see Chapman in the new prologue. Now we're going to go back to the prologue, a prologue, where Chapman is detailed to why he has done the actions that he has done, which no one needed. It added absolutely nothing to this story, especially when he admits that the reason why he did it was partially because he was bored. Character Development 101! And this prologue absolutely goes on for 180 pages about a situation that I don't particularly care about. We're dealing with characters that I particularly don't care about. The only benefit is that it does give Daniel B. Greene a space to build on his characterization of Chapman. Chapman is the only character who feels 3D. All the other characters, including those who come over from Breach of Peace and the new characters, are all edgy and so flat. They just gave me paper cuts. Every time they would speak, I go, ooh, that was, ooh. Oh, what am I looking for when it comes to a story? Well, I'm looking for the author to build tension and at the right moment, release it and then continue building the tension. Now, some tension is dealt with quickly, such as in the fight scenes. Some of them are drawn out across the entire arc, and therefore the end of the story has to be really strong to where that release happens and it feels satisfying. There are books that do that exceptionally well. There are ones that resist that notion that I still enjoy, but there is no tension within this book. Everything's very cards out on the table, and it didn't take me much to go, oh, okay, I see what you were doing. Apart from one thing. Now, Daniel B. Greene has spoken about this, and he talks about the little nuances that he's sad that people don't pick up within his books. Within Breach of Peace, they are wet cobblestones. One of the Anointed who has super quick speed, they wouldn't have been able to catch up to the character because they would be slip sliding around because the friction's gone due to the water. This is an author who is saying that he deals with the nuance, he deals with the intricacies in order to build up his stories. Yet, when it comes to the magic system, proper fantasy reviewer now, boys. Scoot your heinies to the edge of the seat because this is what it was made for. The Anointed. This makes sense. There is some godly presence that during a ceremony they are given a special power, a special gift. And all of them are unique and individual. Not one is the same. I get that. I understand that. They are pretty much invincible, so I'm curious to even see how Greene is going to pull this story together without ironically bringing in a Deus Ex Machina. And then we have the grips that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So they have telekinesis powers so they can pull people left, right and centre. And truly, maybe there was a grip within my book because it dragged me through this novel. They use their powers, but in some way it hurts themselves. I didn't really understand it. There's no explanation. Well, there is. But let's talk about how writers deal with things that aren't explained. You either have to slowly ebb out the information. Look at Brandon Sanderson in The Way of Kings. Sprens aren't really explained, but as you get further into the novel, he'll ease out information. So as a reader, you go, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. Or you do something like Philip K. Dick does, which is you mention something once and you never mention it ever again. It's just a othering quality that makes you understand that this is not the world that you are in. The grips are throughout this book, and I have no concept of what they do, why they do it, apart from a Daniel B. Greene video where he explains it, which is a really curious move, because I can't tell now if Daniel B. Greene's videos are a paratext. They are the glossary towards this book. No one outside of Daniel B. Greene's influence, apart from this schmuck, is reading this without knowing who he is, or in some way understanding who he is. So Greene doesn't really act as an author who doesn't have these channels. He doesn't have to explain it in the books because he could just make a video on it explaining it. He almost doesn't have to write it because his audience who were invested in him would already have that prior knowledge. Or if they hadn't read it in the book, subconsciously they would remember the video and go, oh, I think that's what he said about that. Okay, let's carry on. I know it's for his audience. You're going to have to pay 60 quid pretty much for the entire series to get a half-baked book. But I'm not sure that's a good thing. I think things should be explained and not, oh, I've listened to your criticism and I've stuck it in the next book because I know that you wanted that information. Being the YouTuber and writer, he's able to be the master of puppets in some way. And maybe that's YouTube culture. And YouTube culture has clearly influenced this book. I don't care what anyone says. In the second half, there is a chess scene that is clearly ripped from the Queen's Gambit. Remember when that was like the most popular thing in the world? And then YouTube chess channels such as Gotham Chess. Remember Gotham Chess? They were all everywhere talking about knight goes to g6 and g6 move back and the bishop goes over here, and then the app chess, like everyone had it, everyone was playing chess, and then after like 6 months it all died a death that no one particularly cared. We have a chess moment where he literally, rather than building tension, gives us how the pieces are moving. Knight g6, king I4. That's the tension. Unless you literally have a chessboard by the side mapping out the pieces, which no one is going to do. And if you do, you need to get out a bit more, people. There's no tension in this. And it's clearly, this was clearly written last year. I don't blame the guy for doing it because that's how YouTube works, that you have to talk about the thing that's of the moment. Why do you think everyone's reading Dune now? Why do you think everyone's making Dune related content now? People were doing it before, but Dune is the thing at the moment. It's the cultural thing that everyone is going to talk about. A year later, Dune isn't going to be well read. Dune isn't going to be reviewed. People are going to be talking about Dune until the next film comes out. The Queen's Gambit and chess channels have had their moment. Therefore, it just feels a little bit weird to mention it. Also, the scene is absolutely rubbish. The second half is lifeless. I contemplated licking batteries just to get a buzz in my system while reading this. The book, similar to Breach of Peace, is only there for the climactic showdown, where Greene has been broken out of her cell, well, actually the second time, despite being a super soldier and that people have eyes all over her. Earlier on, she breaks free and everyone's like, oh yeah, maybe if we do have super soldiers, we should like actually be able to contain them or maybe control them. I have to laugh because it feels as though Greene had the first breakout and even himself went, well, actually, how did this happen? But nevertheless, it happens again. A Greene who hasn't smoked, we haven't had a single tobacco reference throughout there, gets out of the elevator and goes, has anyone got a cigarette? I'd love to be able to take the cigarette smoke, everyone, but I have a metal taste in my mouth. And this is where we just have the bombardment of the metal taste within the mouth. There's blood everywhere. We have a fight scene that I thought Breach of Peace was lackluster. This one doesn't even feel as though it's trying. The grip with his unbeknown powers that aren't explained to anyone rips the spine out of the Anointed. And the Anointed's reaction is to go, that hurt. Fuck me. Jesus Christ. And then it ends on classic cliffhanger, there's an army coming. Oh my God. And I'm waiting for Daniel Greene to write something that is decent, that he's not going to splurt out the next book. I was surprised that this came out so quickly after Breach of Peace. I was utterly bamboozled when I had a few messages saying, hey, he's brought out Rebels Creed. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was like, you could pre-order it for next year. No, literally, it's been, what, like, it's less than a year. You know what I think about this book, but I'm going to mention these 2 points right at the end, because I could see some people tapping comments very early on, and I would just like to point them at the timestamp here. You could call me a hater, but a hater is a person that, even if it is good, is just going to tarnish it. And I'm not doing that. If the book is good, I will happily put my hands up and go, hey, he's done it. Hey, he's written something decent and I think you should go and read it. I have no issue in that. Second point I think people are going to make are, you just don't like self-publish or indie author. I actually think this is probably a tarnishing towards the name of self-published and indie authors. People who put hours, days, years into their craft, stick it online for a fee and have zero readership. Greene's kind of brute forced his way into this system. Do I think he should have gone the traditional publishing route? Hey, with the size of his audience, I have zero doubt that any fantasy publisher would have picked him up like that. They would have edited it, they would have scoured it, they would have publicized it. It's Daniel Greene. They would have put it everywhere. It's a money-making machine. There's no way the Greene, with his audience, with his numbers, with the amount that he can possibly sell just by having his name on it, that a traditional publisher would have passed on him. The last point I think people are going to hold on until that branch snaps is, he's a new author. He's not a new author. This is his sophomore book now. This is his second one. You cannot maintain that he's a new author and, well, he wrote the thing. That's good enough. It's not good enough in publishing. I'm really sorry if you think that just by writing 50,000 words that you get a round of applause, a pat on your back. Daniel B. Greene isn't even going to react to this video because guess what? He doesn't need to win over me. He has hordes of people who are going to blindly buy the book and read the book and say it's good because they have a parasocial relationship with Daniel Greene. I don't. I don't care who Daniel B. Greene is. I don't care what he does. I don't particularly care if he doesn't like me. I don't have that relationship with the YouTube creator and author. I am just a consumer. And I've spent my money and I'm telling you what I think of the product. And the product is simply not good.